The last thing we need to talk about with our review of functions is function composition. This is my favorite thing to do with functions because we're putting functions inside of functions and getting inputs from other outputs of other inputs, and it's like it's one big chain. It's like a little fish is getting eaten by a bigger fish, which gets eaten by an even bigger fish, which gets eaten by a shark. That's basically what we're doing here. We're eating a little fish, but with functions. So let's talk about this notation first of all. This right here means f of g of x. It doesn't mean f times g. This is not a multiplication sign. This is like a little o. It means f of g of x. Literally, it means this. The function g of x is the entire input in my f function. So actually, I might even highlight that, and I might say I might highlight that with a highlighter. Say that this g of x, this right here, is the input in f of x. So I'm taking what g of x is and I'm putting it into f of x. Now notice g of x has its own input. X is the input in the g function. So we're really like nesting these things. It's kind of like Russian nesting dolls. I can come up with all kinds of analogies for function composition. So let's just dive into it before I get carried away too much. In this first example, I want to find what f of g of 2 is. So there's a whole bunch of different ways we can think about this. The output of my g function when I put in a 2 becomes the input of my f function. But why don't we just kind of delayer that a little bit. And let's first start off by finding what g of 2 is. G of 2 is going to equal, let's look at this function for g of x, 2 plus 5, which is 7. So basically what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take this 7, which is the output when 2 is my input in the g function, and this is going to be what I substitute in for this g of 2. G of 2 is equal to 7, so now I want to find what f of 7 is equal to. F of 7 is equal to 4 minus 2x, or 2 times 7. So f of 7 equals 4 minus 14, which is equal to negative 10. What does that mean? That means that f of g of positive 2 equals negative 10. So basically, we want to start on the inside and work our way out. Next up, I want to find what g of f of 2 is. And the first thing I would suggest is, I don't really know how to make a lot of sense out of this. I have this like urge to think of this as multiplication. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm going to rewrite this as g of f of 2. That's going to help me kind of make sense of this. And I'll follow the same process as I did before. Let's first start off by finding out what f of 2 is. So f of 2 is going to equal 4 minus 2 times 2, which is equal to 4 minus 4, which is equal to 0. That's pretty nice. Now let's take that value and let's put that into my g function. So now I want to find what g of 0 is. G of 0 is 0 plus 5, which is equal to 5. So what does that mean? That means that g of f of 2 equals 5. So we are composing these functions together, and there's nothing that says we can't compose a function within itself. I can find out what f of x is. I can find out what f of x is. In fact, I can find what f of x is. Why not? Well, maybe we don't have to do that, but we can start with this right here. Let's start off by plugging in. Now this time I don't actually have a value to plug in, so it might seem a little confusing, but really think of it as the input in my f function is f of x. So that means what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find what f of, let's take my f of x function. F of x is defined as 4 minus 2x. I want to put 4 minus 2x then into my function for f. So this f of x becomes the entire input in my f function. So let's find what f of 4 minus 2x is. What does that mean? It means that wherever I see an x, I'm putting 4 minus 2x. So this is going to equal, let's go back to blue here, 4 minus 2 times whatever my input is. And what I'm doing is I'm taking this 4 minus 2x, and that becomes the input in this function. So if this is kind of tricky, that's okay. Maybe pause the video and digest this a little bit. The entire function f of x is the input in my larger f of x function. So I'm taking the entire rule, or what the entire definition of f of x is, and that becomes my input in my f function. So that wherever I see an x, I'm putting this 4 minus 2x. And I can do this over and over and over again, but I'm just going to stop it 2 times. Now what I need to do is just evaluate, or simplify rather. So this is going to be 4 minus, distribute that, negative 2. That'll be 8 plus 4x. So all of this is equal to 4x minus 4.